Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today I've got Geoff Hudson-Searle. Geoff, great to have you with us today.
Tim, it's really great to be on your show here today, and yeah, thank you for inviting me.
That's and by the way, before we go any further, I am going to mention Geoff's book. It's one's found their way next to my desk here. I read it when I was in France in the summer, and it's fantastic. It's well worth a read. Before we go any further, Geoff, and we start unpacking trust in the post-pandemic arena, where can people get hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, I think the easiest way to get hold of me is LinkedIn. Alternatively, the IBEM website, which is ib-em.com, or freedomafterthesharks.com, which is my blog site. So yeah, either of those areas are easily accessible. So.
And in terms of spelling your name, it's Geoff with a G, G-E-O.
Geoff with a G. Geoff, yeah. Jeffrey without the R-E-Y. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So, in terms of trust, you've been on a bit of a journey, and I mean, you do an awful lot of research. I think this is your second book, isn't it?
Fifth.
Fifth.
Yeah. There's three behind me. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, it kept referring to another one so I assumed it was a second one. Sorry.
No, I did three of my own, Tim, and two collaboration. I enjoyed the collaboration bit because it was sort of working with the TEDx speakers and working with some thought leaders, and I always wanted to collaborate around different subjects. So I did the other two. I was approached on two other books, but no, three of my own and two collaborations.
So give us your story in terms about the trust and how you see the importance of that, especially in the current climate.
So it all started, as you said, I did a lot of research. I commissioned DataPad, I don't know if you're aware of who they are, earlier this year to do a trust report for IBEM, which is the company, obviously, that I run. And we sort of knew the answers before we commissioned the report. We knew it was bad. We didn't know it was exactly going to be as bad as the findings showed us. But that sort of created the fact that 69% of the people that were surveyed showed they didn't trust their line manager or their chief exec, which, as far as we're concerned, is a horror in any environment. And when I talk about leadership, I don't necessarily think that leadership is just around business. I think, it starts at home, right? So, leadership at home, mum, dad, grandma and granddad, actually. Look at business, and then you look at government, of course, and geopolitically, how government and do we trust our government? So I think this trust issue has been an issue for a very long time. I'm not recycling the words at all here. I think, this has been an ongoing situation. And what is the importance? I believe that trust is actually the glue. It's the glue behind the relationship. It's the glue behind distrust. Look at organizations that have trust versus distrust. Right, and look at the balance in that, and then look at the situation. So I think in terms of that, a lot of people, obviously my book is called Purposeful Discussions, and 3 years ago when I came up with the title, I didn't expect that purpose was going to be driven as much as it is today. And really, in genuine speaking, we're talking about companies that are talking about having a CPO, a chief purpose officer. And the questions are being asked around what is the value sets around purpose and trust within an organization. Can we look at corporate culture and how do we incorporate the genesis of trust within our organization? Yeah. So I think right now we're in and whilst I think it's great that from a post-pandemic point of view, we've had the working from home scenarios, we have people working remotely, people that haven't had a conversation before, right? And people are starting to wonder, well, how do we lead with trust? How can we be a trust-based leader in this period and beyond? Because how do we get more out of our employees? COVID has shown activity, it's shown productivity, that showed defined outcomes with the business, but actually these questions are huge in the scheme of things, and you've got to get back to sort of understanding why didn't they trust you in the first place. Okay.
So what in your research, what's the essence of the lack of trust, or that you found in the research?
So the research came down to several things. Number one, millennials. So we looked at millennials, we looked at Generation X, and we looked at Generation Y together as one, as a unity, and we started to look at what the different reactions were. Millennials are kind of like, if you don't share my values, then I don't work for you. It's quite clear with the way they want to be managed or communicated. With Gen X, it's a completely different scenario. It's kind of like, look, this is a brand. We are building a brand strategically. This is about our vision, our mission, and our values. We created a sort of personality trait, and we are going to communicate internally and externally in a certain way. And the Generation Y is still focused on old school modeling, but had to adapt to the new way of operating, and encompassing ideas that have come from millennials and also from Gen X, actually, to a degree, because of the decade difference. So I think in some respects, those values that we talk about are incredibly important, but you've got to look at how we behave. When I break trust down, I break it down into some categories. So first of all, I sort of look at number one, are we listening to our people? Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, are we being really empathetic in our listening? And then furthermore, for me to really understand someone, I've got to listen, I've got to be empathetic, I've got to share in whatever they're sharing, in order to get sort of trust from them. But more importantly, trust is not just about a set of words, it's about a set of defined actions. So if you're listening and then you're executing, the two have to come together. And then are we embellishing purpose within the organization as a direct result of listening, of being empathetic, of sharing those values, and truly trusting people to do the same? And whilst there is always going to be mistrust, because that's the way we are, communications in all of this has, there's been heightened communications as a direct result, because when you start looking at what trust really means or what it represents, you've got big words in there like self-trust, you've got the relationship trust, you've got organizational trust, market trust, socialite trust, because the speed of what we're doing today, you've got to have trust. And if you don't have trust, you're gonna find yourself in a very big hole very soon.
And you talk about trust and purpose really being kind of one of the same. It kind of dovetails into each other.
I think people in the organization, trust, if you took circles, on a whiteboard, and you sort of said, okay, what are we talking about here? Are we, in fact, I wrote this down. Yeah, here we go. If we talk about talent, and if we talk about passion, okay, commitment and passion, need, and your conscious self, there's got to be a voice, and that tone of voice is what really brings everything together. It's very similar to the World Economic Forum 2 years ago in 2018 stood up and said, if you want to keep your job in the decade, you're going to have to adopt more emotional intelligence around leadership. And there's an awful lot of discussion on and around, should leadership be more EI or IQ, or they're bringing out new words of SIQ and TQU. Well, forget the TQU and the SIQ, but I do concentrate on EI and IQ and what is the balance, because you've got to have in order to have a meaningful conversation, you've got to be able to communicate.
So that when you talk about EQ, you're talking about an emotion. You're talking about an emotional intelligence. So
yeah, it's cognitive.
It's an empathy and a sympathy with people.
And that all blend I used the word embellish before, but I want to use it again. That all is the glue. It's the glue in everything that we've described on and around trust.
Okay, good. And So in terms of you look at you've looked at your research, and you're seeing that there's failings in organizations right now for trust. And what do you think's happened in terms of, because the pandemic's come and tipped everything up. What is it that you think that we now need to do as leaders within the current pandemic?
In leadership, in business, if we are talking about that right now, I think there are three areas. I mean, obviously you've got the ELT, executive leadership teams, you've got executives and directors, you've got the board, all right, and in everything we do, and it was very clear by McKinsey's report, global leadership report across 14,500 businesses, when they interviewed, 84% of that survey said they did not have the capacity or the ability to make change or drive further performance. That all that does is send out a message of mistrust in leadership. So leadership is without question got to step up, and across the board. And right now they've had to step up. Boards that would just meet once a month meetings around a board pack that were given 48 hours ago are now hands-on. I'm hands-on. I'm an NXD. I'm hands-on. You've got to be hands-on. You've got to guide. Leadership's had a brilliant opportunity in the last 120 days to not just step up, but guide and support their people. And I don't just mean their executive leadership teams, their people through and into better chartered waters. And that will give them the biggest amount of respect through an incredibly difficult period. This pandemic is not just an event. This is a world recessionary event that there's no better time that leadership could actually engage in their people and show them empathy, and at the same time, I'm not going to use those words, buy their loyalty, but they get their loyalty.
And I think we've gone from a situation, haven't we, where we had 1,000 people in an office to where we now have 1,000 offices. And each person has their own different, you've got people who are single, people who are married, people who may be LGBTQ, all different types of people, all have their own different pressures, and in a way, as leaders, we have to take, it sounds like an awful lot of work, but we have to take all that into account.
You really do. And if you don't take it into account, you're going to go back to that word mistrust that I talked to you about before. And I think that's going to reduce productivity. That's going to reduce defined outcomes. That's going to affect the bottom line. No question about it. I mean, this whole thing about the office working you talk about. I mean, look, I think people, with the kids now certainly going back to school, I actually believe that people do want to have some kind of normality. I mean, I've been very active and very bold through this period because I've had to step up, and I am doing meetings on a regular basis. Different, certainly, but and not as much as I was. My office in the city is barely used now, but the bottom line is there's no question about the fact that being in a meeting, and what was the statistic on that? If you're doing a virtual boardroom or a virtual call, there is 10.43 ideas shared as opposed to face 13.93 was the statistics that I saw. So if you think about that as a rule in thumb, and I mean, the last strategy session I did with the board that I represent was a 13-hour day with the time zones difference and getting everybody together. So if we did the math and the multiply, you can see that, yes, we would still certainly charter into those waters that I talked about, but I would rather be in a room where we can generate solutions to ideas and talk about execution.
So what is it that people need to do to reset, do you think, in the current time?
I think Darwin said it poetically very well. And it's not the strongest of species that survives, but it's certainly the one that's more adaptable to change. Never was there ever a truer statement. And when I wrote about Darwin about 5 years ago, I had people talking to me saying that I didn't understand evolution. And I'm not talking about evolution now. I'm talking about revolutionary times. Revolutionary times needs people to step up. It's not just about more of the same old. This is, scenario planning, business, what we're talking about, strategic planning at the highest level has got to be more within organizations. Even at SME level, they've got to be starting to look at what would it look like if things went all wrong. What are we doing in terms of our innovation? Where are we in our creativity? Money doesn't solve the problem. Yeah, it's people are intrinsic. In the US, they use the term people asset, people capital. There's never been a more important time to have people, okay, intrinsically involved in the day-to-day and the scenarios, and engage people in the decision process. Absolutely, without a shadow of that. Listen more, be more empathetic, understand your people so they can understand the purpose of your organization, and more importantly, where the organization wants to be led. But it needs to be led under trusted based leadership.
And you talk a lot about ethical leadership, don't you? In terms of for me right now, everything has to be about the people. And I don't think we'll ever go back to, the strategy has to, we have a clear purpose as a business, but at the end of the day, it's the people that have to want to go on that journey. Otherwise, you're just a founder and with nothing. There has to be, if you're going to march people up the hill, people are going to want to march people. People want to have to go up the hill.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, look, trust. First of all, trust. Trust has got measurable outcomes, right? This isn't just about a hypothesis of ideas. With trust, I can prove, and I have proved over the last decade, around increased value, okay? Accelerate how trust can accelerate growth, how with trust you can enhance innovation, right? You can improve collaboration, because I talked earlier about trust being the glue to the relationship. And I'm not talking about relationships just here. I'm talking about relationships overseas. Okay, how you want international expansion. You want your product to be known and created awareness into global markets. So therefore, why are you not looking at trust within those relationships? Stronger partnering, absolutely. It's trust every single time. During this period, if you were a startup starting from day one, and then you have no relationships and no contacts, and you don't have that trusted network, you're going to find it incredibly difficult to get your business off the ground. Existing businesses have trusted circles, trusted relationships they can call on. And you know what? Working together more, because it's more meaningful. I can't go to a face-to-face meeting now because it's a meaningful outcome, or there's something defined that's going to come out of the meeting, where now I'll do virtual as phase one, but certainly phase two and phase three, where we've got to go to a point of agreement, it is a face-to-face encounter.
And what about, slightly at tangent, but what about Sorry? So slightly at a tangent, but what about sustainability nowadays?
No question about it. I mean, it depends on when you're talking. Are you talking about business sustainability, or is you talking about sustainability in terms of the circle movement and green?
So in terms of business sustainability.
Business sustainability. Again, you're not going to be able to develop. You're not going to be able to execute a sustainable model unless you've got people on your journey with you that trust you. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And what we've seen with the millennials is we've seen a lot of businesses, certainly smaller businesses, excuse me, are failing because they can't sustain the growth. Yeah. They can hire people, but they're not. And I know that in order to create the right business and be sustainable, it's about hiring the right people that are going to continue on the journey with you. Okay. It's not all about exit, by the way. I have no revenue and I've got a 300 million valuation. Really? I think we're going to see a big change on and around business valuation through the post-pandemic period as well. It's not all going to be big number tickets based on ideas, and that you're going to have to demonstrate that you're a good risk for any future either investor or person coming in to acquisition and purchase, and it is about people.
And how do you see the fourth industrial revolution impacting us?
The fourth, I'm not interested in the fourth. I'm more interested in the fifth right now. So look, the fourth industrial revolution was interesting, and that's why I wrote the book. COVID has accelerated our behavior by at least 120 days. In the last 120 days, by at least 5 years.
Yeah.
So I see the fifth industrial revolution coming in. I'm seeing all that really cool stuff around quantum computing, AI, ML, things you get really excited about. And it's not just about data. It's we got to get smarter with our data and speed of data, mission critical in some respects, but the mission critical innovations around technology passed into other environments like the retail and consumer area will accelerate our whole world 10, 20 times over. So I think this is incredibly exciting. The biggest question is not about the fourth or fifth. It's getting leadership, and it's getting management, and it's getting businesses, and it's getting innovation. The innovation that's going to absolutely be applied to some of these techniques ready. And are we ready? No.
Do you think it needs a different type of leadership?
Yeah, I mean, look, we haven't even got a chief digital officer in government. Sorry, that was really bad. That was really bad. But seriously, again, you have to question that. Why didn't we have a CDO like 10 years ago, right? Because it's not after the event. We're doing everything after the event, right? It's like I do a lot of work around cyber and cybersecurity. It's like ransomware. There's no point getting consultants in afterwards. After the event, it's preventional strategy. It's plan. We're back to the things we touched on a little bit. Strategy, planning, okay, planning and consensus and engagement and execution, right? And drive more. Well, and I believe that planning is constantly evolving. It's not a 160-page document that everybody doesn't want to read or adopt. It's engaging the people. But we've got to get away from just sending people ridiculous messages and expecting them to execute. We've got to bring them into the conversation. You've got to bring them in, they're being a part of that journey. Then they won't leave. Then you've got your business sustainability because your people capital and your people assets stay with you on that journey. It's about engaging and working with people to achieve that overall objective.
So you've talked in the past about there being a number of classic board skills. So the skills that the board of the business needs in terms of compliance, regulation, and you talk about having an understanding of the difference of the intergenerational impacts, which you talked about earlier on, which I think is critical.
Yeah, that is so important. I mean, boards are missing two things. Boards have got to change 100%. I've just written a blog which will go out in October this year. It's all about why the virtual boardroom does not work, right? Does not work. Boards need to meet together to make decisions, better decisions that will carry businesses through disruption and change. Number one. Number two, we've got to bring in millennials. I think there's huge value. Millennials are super smart, super quick. They're super intelligent, and they will burn out. But use them and take them onto the boards of seats of companies because they've got a voice. Okay, they've got things to share. And if you put millennials together with Gen X and Gen Ys, you're going to have a board with any ELT that's going to take you through any situation, frankly. I mean, we've all gone through events. I mean, I had Black Friday, I had the double dip of 2008, 2009, dot-com boom, we had SARS, we had, Ebola, and now we got this. To me, this is just another event. But if you've got that wisdom, and you're tapping into that knowledge, okay, and you're sharing that knowledge, and you're able to actually look at things from a different perspective because you're scenario planning, you're looking at strategy in a different way, you're looking at product development, innovation, you're looking at security in a different way.
So, Geoff, before we finish off, the time goes very quickly.
So I'm enjoying
it. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Thank you. Is there anything else that you think that we should talk about?
Yeah, I guess there's one thing. We talked about. I wrote a few notes actually, Danny. I want to leave on this note because we have talked about trust. I'd like to leave a few points on the foundation of trust. Okay, so for me, we talked a lot about theory, but to be successful with trust in an organization as a business leader, I believe it's taking a better assessment of the current trust levels that you do have in that organization. And I really mean that. Doing an employee satisfaction report that no one gets to interact properly with anyone is useless, quite frankly. And I have to assess these things occasionally, and I just pull them apart because they're just not worth the paper they're written on. Loosen as leadership with working from home, particularly, there's been a new behavior. So loosen the reins a bit. Yeah, let people breathe. Let's go back to allowing people to be creative. God help us. Google and their 20% KPI. Let's get back to being creative and actually going out for a walk with colleagues and actually talking to them about creative solutions and ideas. Suddenly your organization starts to change. Communicate openly. We need more authenticity in leadership. We need transparency. We need openness. Create transformation and change that's meaningful. Right? Meaningful, sustainable, something you can actually develop and grow. Very, very important. And finally, my final tip on this is invest in employees. Invest in the time with employees. Invest with employee engagement. Okay? Really invest in your people asset because they're intrinsic to your business.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Geoff. It's not just about investing them in terms of giving them the skills, but it's also about investing in your own time.
Absolutely.
In those people as well.
Yeah. And if you want your business to be successful, you'll invest in your people.
Yeah, absolutely. You will do. Yes. Yeah. Geoff, it's been fantastic. I'm going to mention your book again because I know you're very modest. And so if you haven't ordered it on Amazon while we've been talking, then get a copy of Geoff's or one of the other 4 books that he's written, because they're above his head. I've spotted after I said that, I realised that they're all above you. They're all placed up there above your head. Geoff, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed every minute. Thank you very much.
And your views on trust, I think, is so critical, especially in right now in the pandemic, that we have to trust people.
I agree, and I think if viewers walk away with even one of the things we've talked about, they'll affect positive change.
Thank you so much.
Been great.
Remind people where they get hold of you.
Sorry, sir?
Remind people where they can get hold of you.
You can absolutely get hold of me on LinkedIn, obviously, Geoff with a G, as Tim said earlier, ib-em.com. Go to About Us. You'll see my business profile on my website. But also, if you would like my weekly and bi-weekly blogs, please sign up to my weekly and bi-weekly blog on freedomafterthesharks.com, and you'll get my regular writings and updates, loads of resources, loads of research on there as well, so videos.
Geoff, thank you so much for today, and have a good rest of the day. It's going to be a hot one.
It's going to be a hot one for sure. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Geoff.
Cheers.